For millions of Americans who begin their mornings watching Craig Melvin on television, he appears composed, confident, and completely in control, no matter how chaotic the news cycle becomes. Whether discussing heartbreaking national tragedies, political tensions, economic uncertainty, or emotionally charged interviews, Craig carries himself with a calm steadiness that viewers have come to trust deeply. But what many people never realized is that behind that reassuring presence exists a quiet personal struggle familiar to countless men entering their 60s. The challenge of protecting inner peace while living in a world filled with relentless noise, pressure, and emotional exhaustion. Over the years, the pace of live news had changed dramatically around him. Stories moved faster, public reactions became harsher. Every sentence spoken on television could instantly become the subject of criticism online. Producers demanded immediacy, audiences demanded perfection, and the emotional weight of covering painful stories day after day slowly began affecting Craig more deeply than he admitted publicly. Friends close to him later described periods when he would return home emotionally drained after long broadcasts, carrying the sadness of the day's headlines long after the camera stopped rolling. Unlike earlier generations of broadcasting, modern journalists rarely have time to emotionally process what they witness before moving on to the next crisis. Craig reportedly began feeling trapped in a cycle of constant tension, always preparing, always reacting, always carrying the invisible pressure of knowing millions of people were watching every expression, every pause, every word. Yet during one especially difficult stretch of live coverage involving several emotionally devastating national stories, Craig quietly discovered a personal spiritual practice that would gradually change the way he handled both television and life itself. It was not something dramatic or heavily religious. In fact, many people around him never even noticed he was doing it. According to those closest to him, including his wife, Lindsay Charniak, Craig developed the habit of taking a few silent moments before every broadcast to completely disconnect from the chaos around him. While makeup artists moved quickly, producers shouted updates through headsets, and countdown clocks ticked toward airtime, Craig would quietly close his eyes, breathe slowly, and repeat a simple internal reminder: be present, be truthful, be calm. At first, it seemed almost insignificant, but over time that brief ritual became the emotional foundation that kept him grounded during some of the most stressful periods of his career. Lindsay later shared with friends that she noticed the difference almost immediately. Craig became less reactive at home, more patient, more emotionally available. Instead of carrying the weight of every news story into family life, he slowly learned how to separate the noise of television from the deeper values that truly mattered to him. The practice was never about escaping reality or ignoring difficult news. Rather, it became a way of reminding himself that while he could not control the chaos of the world, he could control the spirit in which he responded to it. That quiet shift in perspective changed everything. Rather than approaching live television with fear of mistakes or pressure to impress audiences, Craig began treating each broadcast as an opportunity to simply serve viewers with honesty and compassion. Ironically, the less he focused on performance, the more authentic and trusted he became. Viewers noticed something different in him over time, a calm, emotional presence that felt increasingly rare in modern media. Older audiences especially connected with that energy, because many of them understood exactly what Craig was learning later in life. Peace is not something the world hands you, it is something you protect intentionally. Behind the scenes, Lindsay played a powerful role in helping him nurture that mindset. Having experienced the intense demands of broadcasting herself, she understood how emotionally consuming the profession could become. Friends close to the couple often described Lindsay as the emotional counterbalance that kept Craig connected to life beyond television. During periods of heavy public scrutiny or exhausting coverage, she encouraged him to step away from screens, spend quiet time with family, and reconnect with ordinary moments that fame often pushes aside. Family dinners without phones, evening walks, early mornings without television playing in the background. Those routines slowly became sacred spaces of emotional recovery. Craig also reportedly became more selective about how much negativity he allowed into his personal life. He stopped obsessively reading criticism online and began recognizing that constant exposure to outrage was quietly damaging his mental clarity. That realization resonated deeply with many viewers in their 60s, who often feel overwhelmed by the nonstop anger and division dominating modern culture. In many ways, Craig's spiritual practice reflected something older generations instinctively understand: inner stability matters more than public approval. Over time, colleagues at the network noticed subtle but meaningful changes in him. Even during breaking news situations filled with tension and uncertainty, Craig remained remarkably centered. One producer later described him as the calmest person in the room when everyone else is panicking. That steadiness did not come from arrogance or emotional distance. It came from discipline, the daily choice to pause, breathe, and reconnect with his deeper values before stepping into the spotlight. Perhaps that is why his story resonates so powerfully with audiences later in life. By 60, many people have learned through hardship that external success alone cannot protect emotional well-being. Careers evolve, public opinion changes, the world grows noisier. But the ability to remain grounded, compassionate, and spiritually centered becomes increasingly valuable with age. Craig Melvin's quiet practice became more than a broadcasting habit. It became a philosophy for surviving modern life without losing yourself inside it.
And for countless viewers watching him each morning, there was something profoundly comforting about seeing a man navigate pressure not with aggression or ego, but with calmness, humility, and grace. Because in a world constantly demanding louder voices and faster reactions, Craig's journey offered a gentler reminder that sometimes the strongest people are not the ones who dominate every room. They are the ones who remain peaceful while standing in the middle of the storm.